You see, there is a strength that is born not from effort, but from surrender. The world tells you to fight harder, push stronger, and make things happen. But the Spirit whispers differently. Relax. Trust. Let God work in silence, because when you release control, you invite the power of heaven to MBRO beyond your limitations. Faith is not proven in noise, it is proven in rest. There are seasons where God will strip away your sense of control, not to punish you, but to teach you that He never needed your effort to perform His will. You will try to open doors that refuse to move, and in frustration, you will feel powerless. But that is exactly where the divine begins to speak. In the quiet breakdown of your plans, He is constructing His purpose. In the stillness, faith matures. In your silence, heaven begins to rearrange the impossible. Do not mistake silence for inaction. When nothing seems to change, that is when God is working most deeply. Like a seed hidden in the soil, divine transformation happens out of sight. The surface looks still, but underneath, roots are spreading, foundations are forming, and destiny is preparing to bloom. The unseen is often the birthplace of your great Asparti miracle. To relax in faith does not mean apathy, it means spiritual confidence. It means you have looked at the storm and decided that peace is your response. You have stared at uncertainty and chosen to rest, because you know who commands the winds. Detachment is not escape, it is mastery. It is TBRH moment. When you stop reacting emotionally to life and start responding spiritually. You no longer need everything to go your way, because you trust the one who directs the way. When you hold too tightly, you suffocate what God is trying to breathe into. But when you release your grip, when you open in your hands and say, Lord, I trust you even here, heaven rushes in with power. What you call loss, God calls preparation. What feels like delay is divine timing arranging perfection. The quiet seasons are not empty, they are pregnant with purpose. The reason many cannot hear God is because they never stop talking. The Spirit's voice is soft. It speaks in whispers to the heart that has learned stillness. And when you reach that stillness, when you stop chasing and simply abide, you begin to see what your striving never could. You begin to discern that the silent spaces of your life are not pure nourishment, but sacred workshops of transformation. My friend, do not fear the silence. Learn to dwell in it. Let the peace of God anchor your emotions when circumstances scream for your attention. You are not abandoned, you are being refined. The presence of God often hides behind quietness. The miracle is in motion, even when your eyes see nothing. So today, breathe. Let go of the anxious need to control everything. Trust the process you cannot see. The universe bends toward those who rest in divine order. Everything changes not because you forced it, but because you finally believe that God's hand is enough. When you stop wrestling and start resting, when you stop worrying and start trusting, the heavens open in silence, and what was once impossible becomes inevitable. In that sacred quiet, the voice of eternity whispers, "Peace, be still. I am working. Let me finish my masterpiece." There comes a moment in life when all the noise around you begins to fade, and you stand face to face with the silence of heaven. You have prayed, cried, declared, and waited, but the answers seem distant. You wonder if God is listening, if He has forgotten, if your faith has somehow fallen short. Yet, my friend, the truth is far greater and deeper than your doubts. In that stillness, something sacred is unfolding. What looks like silence is not the absence of God, it is the activity of His unseen hand. What feels like delay is not denial, it is preparation. Heaven is not ignoring you. Heaven is rearranging everything for you. Faith does not always roar. Sometimes faith whispers. It is that quiet confidence that says, even when I cannot see, I know He is moving. Real trust begins when the noise of fear loses its voice. Many people think faith is proven by how loud we can declare, how hard we can pray, or how much we can do. But true spiritual maturity is found when you can rest while God works, when you can wait without panic, when you can sit in stillness, knowing that the universe bends toward the one who trusts the divine process. Detachment is not giving up, it is giving over. It is SBRIing. I no longer need to control the outcome because I know the one who controls it all. When you reach that place, peace begins to flood your soul. Anxiety loosens its grip. Worry loses its power. Because faith without control is freedom, and freedom without fear is divine strength. There is NBRO greater power than the person who has surrendered fully, yet stands firm in peace. That is when heaven begins to move mightily through quiet hearts that trust completely. In silence, God performs His deepest work. Think of the seed buried beneath the ground. It is hidden, unseen, surrounded by dark barn nests, yet within that hidden space, transformation is happening. It does not struggle or strive to grow, it simply surrenders to the process. The soil presses against it, but that pressure becomes the birthplace of life. The same is true for you. When God buries you in seasons of stillness, it is not your ending. It is the beginning of divine formation. Something inside you is expanding, strengthening, and preparing to emerge. The greatest miracles are often born in moments when nothing seems to move. You may feel forgotten, but heaven is crafting a new chapter in silence. Every closed door, every unanswered prayer, every delay carries divine intention. God is not late, He is aligning. And when alignment is complete, things that once resisted will open effortlessly. But for now, the invitation is simple: relax, trust. Let Him work in silence. To relax in faith is not laziness, it is wisdom. It means you have learned to discern the rhythm of grace. When you no longer rush, you realize that everything has its time, and no one can rush what God has perfectly timed. The world teaches you to chase results. Heaven teaches you to dwell in peace. When you live from rest, you attract the divbur in order that anxiety could never achieve. There is a holy power in emotional detachment. It is not indifference. It is spiritual mastery. You still care, but you are not controlled by the outcome. You still desire, but you are not desperate. You still pray, but you are not panicking. That calm is NBROT emptiness. It is faith matured. The heart that can be still in uncertainty carries the fragrance of heaven. It speaks of someone who knows that storms cannot break what God has built. In that posture of peace, miracles begin to find you. Relationships heal without effort. Opportunities align with authority striving. Provision flows without fear, because the energy of rest invites divine movement. The moment you let go of what you cannot change, God changes what you could never touch. The moment you stop trying to prove, fix, or force, heaven begins to orchestrate on your behalf. So when you find you are yourself in a silent season, do not let despair enter. Sit quietly, breathe, listen. You are not alone in the silence, you are in the presence of creation. Every quiet moment is filled with divine motion. The Spirit of God does not need noise to work. He moves in stillness, breathes in pauses, and transforms in waiting. Let your heart whisper, I trust you. Even if the storm rages, whisper it again. Even if the way seems dark, whisper it again. That whisper is not weakness, it is your greatest weapon. Because trust is the language heaven understands best. When you rest, you say to the universe, I know who holds tomorrow. And everything in creation begins to align with that faith. Relax, my friend. Trust deeply. Let God work in silence. You will see that the stillness you feared was the soil of your transformation. The quiet you resisted was the voice of your breakthrough. The silence you questioned was the space where everything began to change. For in the silence of trust, God speaks the loudest, and in that silence, everything becomes new. There is a kind of strength that cannot be seen with the eyes or heard with the ears. It is the quiet strength of a heart that trusts when nothing seems to make sense. The world is filled with voices telling you to fight, to push, to make things happen on your own. But the Spirit calls you to something higher, to rest, to surrender, to trust that when you let go, divine power begins to work in ways your effort never could. When you relax IBR and faith, you are not losing control. You are handing it to the one who has already written your victory. There are moments when you must learn to be still, not because you are weak, but because you are wise. Stillness is not the absence of action. It is the presence of divine alignment. When you choose peace, in the middle of uncertainty, you declare that your faith is stronger than fear. You declare that your confidence is rooted not in what you can see, but in what you believe. You see, trust is not proven when everything goes right. Trust is proven when nothing seems to go right. Yet your Herbert T. remains calm. That calmness is not apathy. It is spiritual authority. Sometimes God will lead you into a season where all your efforts seem to fail, not to discourage you, but to teach you how to let go. You will try to fix situations, change people, and open doors, but they will remain shut. In TBR Ho's moments, frustration will tempt you to question God's presence. But that is when heaven whispers, "Be still. I am working." It is in those silent seasons that the deepest miracles are conceived. God hides his greatest works in quietness because true transformation does not begin in noise, it begins in trust. You see, when you stop fighting for control, you allow the divine flow to take over. There is a rhythm in life that only peace can hear. When your heart is anxious, you cannot hear that rhythm, but when your heart is still, you begin to sense the timing of heaven. The things you once chased start coming toward you. The answers you once forced begin to unfold naturally. Because faith, when fully surrendered, attracts divine order. When you let God work in silence, you become like the eagle that soars without flapping its wings. The eagle trusts the wind to lift it. It does not steer or arrive, it glides. The same is true for you. That once seemed impossible begin to shift. The doors that were locked suddenly open. The people who walked away are replaced with those who were meant to walk in. The opportunities you thought were lost reappear in divine timing. Because God works best when you stop trying to do his job. So my friber end, relax, breathe. The silence of God is not abandonment, it is preparation. The delay you feel is not a punishment, it is a setup. Trust that even when you cannot see his hand, his heart is guiding your every step. When you stop striving, you make space for miracles. When you stop forcing, you make room for grace. When you stop worrying, you start winning, because peace is the proof that you have already overcome. There is nothing more powerful than a soul at rest, a heart that knows everything is under divine control. So today, lay down your fears. Let go of your need to know how and when. Trust that the silence is sacred, the waiting is holy, and the unseen is working in your favor. Everything changes when you relax, trust, and let God work in silence. In that quiet place of surrender, life begins to move again, and heaven whispers the truth your soul has been waiting to hear. Be still, and know that I am God. There is a peace that surpasses all understanding. A peace that does not depend on what you have or what you see, but on who holds your life in his hands. It is the peace that comes when you finally let go of control and allow the divine to move freely in the unseen. Any of us live in constant tension, trying to make things happen, trying to prove ourselves, trying to hold everything together. But the greatest breakthroughs are not born from striving, they are born from surrender. When you relax and trust, you do not lose power, you awaken to a greater one. You begin to operate in the rhythm of heaven, where everything flows in perfect time. The reason many people never find true peace is because they are addicted to movement. They feel that if they are not doing something, nothing is happening. But God often does His best work in silence, in waiting, in the stillness where your hands can no longer reach. You must learn to see delay differently. Delay is not denial, it is divine timing, perfecting your future. You are not being ignored, you are being prepared. The season of stillness is not wasted. It is where the Spirit strengthens what you cannot see. DOHBAGRN. You truly trust, you stop demanding answers. You stop chasing signs and start resting in faith. There is a calm that comes when you know you are being guided by a hand that never fails. The world may tell you that silence is a sign of emptiness, but in the kingdom, silence is the sound of creatio bar N. It is the holy pause before the miracle. The quietness you fear is the space where God arranges what you have been praying for. While you worry about outcomes, heaven is orchestrating alignment. Trust is not something you declare, it is something you live. It is a posture of peace when everything inside you wants to panic. It is smiling in uncertainty because you know your story is not over. When you relax in the presence of God, you become a vessel He can fill. But when you are filled with anxiety, there is no space for divine wisdom to flow. The Spirit works best in open hearts, not clenched or ed fists. Detachment does not mean you stop caring, it means you stop controlling. You still believe, you still pray, but you no longer try to force outcomes that belong to God alone. It takes divine courage to release what you do not understand. It takes strength to walk away from what no longer serves your peace. But every act of letting go becomes an act of faith that declares, I trust you, even here. The moment you release your grip, you will feel the weight lift. You will sense that the battle was never yours to fight. The greatest miracles come not to those who push hardest, but to Toborsihi who rest deepest. For it is in rest that your faith becomes a bridge between what is and what will be. When you stop striving, you create space for divine intervention. When you stop worrying, you create a channel for clarity. When you stop overthinking, you allow inspiration to flow again. Life begins to move differently when your spirit is still. You start to see that everything, every delay, every closed door, every unanswered prayer was a step leading you into divine alignment. Nothing is wasted in the hands of God. Even silence has purpose. Even waiting has meaning. When your emotions are re-anchored in peace, you no longer need to react to life, you respond with wisdom. You begin to see that your peace is your power. It is what protects you, sustains you, and attracts what is meant for you. People who live from peace do not chase, they attract. They do not beg, they believe. They do not fear, they flow. And in that flow, everything begins to rearrange itself in their favor. God's ways are not noisy. The creation of the world began in silence. The resurrection happened before sunrise. The greatest moves of heaven occur quietly in moments that seem ordinary. So if your life feels quiet, do not despair. That silence is sacred. That stillness is divine activity. Something is moving beneath the surface, something greater than you can imagine. There comes a point where you must stop asking, when will it happen? And start declaring, it is happening. Not because you see it, but because you trust it. That is the essence of faith, to believe before there is evidence, to rest before there is reward. The moment you choose to trust in silence, you align yourself with heaven's rhythm, and everything that was once chaotic begins to settle into divine order. So breathe, release your grip on what you cannot control. Relax into the promise that has already been written for your life. Let God work in silence, for in that silence, He is shaping everything for your good. You will see that what once felt like stillness was the sound of heaven moving. Everything changes not by your or force, but by your faith. In the quiet surrender of your soul, you will hear the whisper that transforms everything. Be still. I am working. There is a sacred beauty in stillness that the restless heart cannot understand. The world moves fast. People chase, strive, compare and compete. Believing that motion means progress. Yet, in the realm of the spirit, the most powerful movements begin in silence. When you finally stop running and sit quietly in the presence of God, something shifts within you. You begin to realize that real transformation does not come through noise, but through Divibarne alignment. You understand that what looks like nothing happening is, in truth, the moment heaven begins to rebuild everything that was broken. There comes a time when life will bring you to a place of complete surrender. You will pray and hear nothing. You will plan and watch things fall apart. Ibiru will cry for clarity and receive only quiet. And in that quiet, a new kind of faith is born, the faith that no longer depends on answers, but rests in trust. This faith does not beg, it believes. It does not panic, it abides. It does not need proof because it already knows that God's silence is no distance but depth. When heaven seems quiet, it is because the divine is working beneath the surface, arranging what you cannot yet see. To trust God in the noise is easy. To trust Him in silence is maturity. Silence tests the soul. It exposes what you truly believe. When you cannot feel God, do you still know He is near? When nothing goes your way, do you still know He is good? These are the questions that silence answers, not with words, but with peace. It teaches you to depend not on feelings, but on faith. Not on timing, but on truth. It transforms panic into patience and worry into worshiper peace. That is the holy exchange, your control for His control, your effort for His excellence, your striving for His sovereignty. Detachment is the mark of someone who has walked with God long enough to know that nothing is ever lost in His hands. To detach emotionally is not to stop carrying it, is to stop carrying what was never yours to bear. It is the understanding that peace is more powerful than pressure, that stillness accomplishes what stress never can. When you learn to release the need to manage every detail, you discover that life unfolds with grace. The situations you once tried to force begin to flow naturally. The relationships you once clung to either deepen or dissolve, but either way, peace remains. There is a kind of authority that comes from rest. When your spirit is calm, your words carry weight. When your heart is anchored, your presence changes atmospheres. People who trust God do not need to shout. They carry silent power. They walk into rooms with peace that confuses chaos. They speak with gentleness that commands attention. They live from a center of divine confidence, knowing that their peace is proof of God's presence. That is the secret of spiritual strength. It does not come from striving, but from surrender. When you finally stop trying to prove, perform, or push, you begin to see how perfectly God moves. You start to recognize that every delay protected you, every closed door redirected you, and every silence refined you. The process was never meant to burnish you. It was meant to purify your trust. God was not absent in the silence. He was building you into someone who no longer wavers with the waves. You were being taught to trust the unseen, to rest in what cannot be explained. So many miss the miracle because they cannot bear the stillness. They walk away too soon, thinking nothing is happening. But if only they had waited a little longer, if only they had rested a little deeper, they would have seen that the silence was not empty. It was full of purpose. The unseen hand of God moves quietly, shaping outcomes, preparing hearts, and aligning MBR omens that will suddenly burst into reality when the time is right. You are not being delayed, you are being developed. When your heart finally understands this truth, peace becomes your natural state. You stop asking when, how, and why, and you start saying, I trust you. You realize that the from fear and start living from faith. You stop chasing what was never meant for you and start receiving what always belonged to you. You discover that the quiet places of life are not punishment, they are preparation. God's silence is not distance, it is depth, and His timing is never late. It is always perfect. So rest now. Let the noise of the world fade into the background. The same hand that holds the stars is holding your future. The same voice that spoke creation into being is speaking peace over your heart. You do not need to strive to be seen, you are already known. You do not need to forbore RCE what is meant for you, it will arrive in divine time. Trust the silence. Embrace the stillness. Let your soul breathe again. For in the quiet where nothing seems to move, God is doing His greatest work. And when the moment comes, everything will shift, not because you fought harder, but because Ibaru finally rested deeper. The miracle will not come through noise, but through peace. The transformation will not come through striving, but transformation will not come through striving, but through surrender.